They say the truth doesn't arrive with thunder. It comes quietly, slipping in through the cracks of ordinary life, disguised as something small and insignificant, until suddenly, it's everything. That Saturday morning began like any other in Maplewood Springs. The rain tapped gently against the windows, filling the house with a soft, rhythmic hum. Fresh coffee brewed in the kitchen, its rich aroma mingling with the familiar scent of laundry detergent. But beneath the routine, something felt off. Like a shadow I couldn't see but could feel, low and heavy, pressing against my chest. I was loading clothes into the washing machine, humming an absent tune, when I picked up Philip's jeans, the pair he wore almost every weekend. Like always, I checked the pockets. It was a habit I'd formed years ago. Sometimes I found coins or scraps of paper, reminders of days I wasn't part of. But that morning, my fingers closed around something cold and smooth. It was his wedding ring, not mine, his. I stared at it lying in the palm of my hand, small but impossibly weighty. A simple band of gold, a symbol of everything we promised. And suddenly it felt like the whole world shifted beneath my feet. Why was his ring in his pocket? Philip wasn't careless. In 6 years of marriage, he'd never forgotten to wear it, not even once. Not even during yard work, when he complained that it scratched against the shovel. I held it tighter, trying to steady my breath as a dozen unanswered questions settled in my mind like fog. The house was eerily quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause, as if holding its breath with me. I turned the ring over between my fingers, waiting for an explanation to reveal itself. The feel of it, warm now from my touch, was both familiar and foreign, like the man I thought I knew. Then I heard his footsteps, soft but growing louder. The kitchen door creaked open. Philip walked in, wearing an easy smile, curling his fingers through his damp hair. The same gesture that always used to make me smile back. But this time, I felt hollow. "Hey, babe," he said casually. "Coffee ready?" I froze. He didn't notice the way my body stiffened. Or maybe he chose not to. He crossed the kitchen and reached into the cupboard for a mug, humming, acting like nothing in the world was wrong. But something was. I could feel it in my bones. "Let me see your hand," I said. He paused. "What?" "Your hand, Philip. Let me see your hand." He laughed, unsure. "What's going on? You're being weird." But I wasn't in the mood for games. Before he could react, I grabbed his hand. It was warm, familiar, but bare. No ring. "Where is your wedding band?" I asked, my voice measured, too calm for the chaos inside me. "Don't tell me you lost it." He blinked, looking down at his finger, then back at me. I must have forgotten it. Maybe I left it in the bathroom when I showered last night." "Really?" My voice was sharp. "Go check." He hesitated, just for a second. But that moment, that hesitation, was all I needed to confirm what I already feared. Something was wrong. He turned away, heading for the bathroom. I heard the cabinet doors open, the sound of drawers sliding. Then, his footsteps returned, slower now. "It's not in there," he said. "Maybe, I don't know. It must have fallen somewhere." His voice was thin, his eyes distant. Excuses fell from his lips like leaves from a dying tree. I said nothing, just held the ring up between us, letting the truth sit silently in the air. His face paled. His eyes flicked to mine. And for a split second I saw fear, regret, and something else. Something he wasn't saying. Maybe I should have asked more. Maybe I should have demanded answers. But the truth is, I already knew that whatever explanation he gave would be a lie. A story stitched together to keep me quiet, to keep the peace. So I did the only thing I could muster. I walked past him, left the ring on the dresser beside our bed later that night, and tried to sleep. He didn't mention it again. Neither did I. But sleep never came. Instead, memories and questions tangled into a knot that tightened with every passing minute. I lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing beside me, wondering how many lies one heart could hold without breaking, wondering if mine was already broken. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own life, like I was sharing a bed with a man I didn't recognize. The ring, that small, simple band, had shattered something fragile and sacred. And when dawn came the next day, I wasn't the same woman I'd been before. I was someone who knew things without needing proof. Someone who could feel a lie before it was spoken. Someone with a heart cracking quietly under the weight of what if? And I knew, with a terrible certainty, that this was only the beginning. The next morning, the air in the house felt thick, like the silence itself had weight. Philip moved through the rooms as if nothing had happened, as if the ring he'd abandoned in the pocket of his jeans was just a misplaced object instead of the fracture it was. But I could feel it, the lie pulsing between us, subtle but relentless, like a whisper that never stopped. I stood in the kitchen, making coffee, staring at the steam rising from the mug. Steam evaporates. Truth doesn't. It lingers, even when unspoken. Philip walked in, freshly showered, wearing the same cologne he always used on Sundays. It used to comfort me. Now it made my stomach twist. "Morning," he said, casual, almost too casual. "Morning." My voice felt flat, hollow. He leaned against the counter, sipping his coffee, his eyes flicking toward me like he was waiting for the explosion, the confrontation. But I stayed quiet, not because I trusted him, but because I wanted to see how long he could sustain the performance. He cleared his throat. "You're quiet today." "Am I?" He tried to smile. "You know you're not a very good liar." That made me laugh, a short, humorless sound. Not a good liar. Not like him. We sat in silence for a while. The seconds passed like hours. And in that silence, everything screamed. The ring, the hesitation, the careless excuses. "So, did you find it?" I finally asked, keeping my tone neutral. "What?" He blinked, confused, or pretending to be. "Your wedding ring, the one you said was in the bathroom." "Oh, He shifted in his seat. "No, I mean, I must have dropped it somewhere. It'll show up." "Will it?" I tilted my head. "You're not wearing it today." His hand went to his finger, instinctively this time, and when he realized what he'd done, he froze, eyes darting away, searching for a new lie. "I just forgot," he said, shrugging like it was nothing, but his voice didn't match his body. And his body didn't match the truth. It was all wrong. He took another sip of coffee and suddenly found the window very interesting. The yard, the rain, anything but me. The silence stretched again, filling the room like fog. I wanted to scream, to slam my hands on the table and force him to look at me, to tell me the real reason his ring had been hidden. But what good would it do? The lie was already alive, breathing, growing. People think betrayal starts with a kiss, or a look, or a late-night text. No. It starts with silence, with something missing, something once so natural you don't even notice it's gone until the absence turns into a wound. At some point, he stood up, said he needed to get going, that he had errands, more excuses, more distance. He didn't come over to kiss my forehead like he used to. Didn't walk behind me and wrap his arms around my waist. It was like he was afraid to touch me, or worse, relieved that he didn't have to. "See you later," he said, grabbing his keys. I turned my back so he couldn't see the way my hands trembled. "Sure." The door closed. I stared at the empty space he left behind, feeling more alone in that moment than I had in years. Alone in a house we built together. Alone inside a love he was quietly undoing. I gathered my courage and went upstairs. to our bedroom, the place where we whispered dreams into pillows, where we fell asleep intertwined. I stood beside the dresser, the one with the wooden tray where we placed our rings on the rare occasions we took them off, always together. His spot was empty. Mine wasn't. And then I saw it, the ring, back on his side of the drawer, like a ghost that had found its way home. Quiet, heavy, but he'd said he didn't know where it was. So, he'd found it and put it back, without saying a word. A lie, disguised as silence. I picked it up again, slowly, as if it might burn my fingers, and I wondered, what kind of promise is a ring when the heart behind it has already turned away? Later that night, we sat down for dinner in front of the TV. A sitcom played, the kind he liked, the kind that used to make us laugh. I watched the characters pretend their problems didn't exist and realized how easy it was to fake a moment. Philip made small talk, the weather, work, the neighbor's new dog. Every word hung in the air like a fragile ornament ready to crack. I answered when necessary. I smiled when it seemed appropriate, and I could tell he wasn't fooled. He knew I knew, but neither of us said it. At bedtime, he turned off the light, lay down on his side of the bed, and fell asleep quickly, or pretended to. I couldn't do either. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last 2 days, every detail that had fallen out of place in silence. The truth hadn't been spoken, but it had already been heard. And it's strange. The more I tried to ignore it, the louder it echoed. A ring, a lie, a silence. That's how some stories end, or how they begin to. It was late afternoon when the phone rang. I remember the light slipping through the blinds, bending into soft orange beams across the living room. I was folding laundry, almost mechanically, trying to carry on as if everything was fine. The house was quiet, still bearing the weight of the ring and the lie that had settled between us. Philip was upstairs, showering. The sound of water running was a dull, distant noise. But the phone, that sharp, piercing ring, cut through everything. At first, I ignored it. It stopped. Then it started again, persistent, urgent. The third time, something in my chest tightened. Anxiety, I told myself. Just pick it up. Hello? There was a silence, faint breathing. Then a woman's voice, soft, hesitant, almost unsure. Hi, is this Philip's phone? Her voice was unfamiliar, very much so. A jolt of electricity ran through me. Yes, I said slowly, my voice tightening. It is. He's not available. Who's this? A pause. She inhaled softly. I need to talk to him. Could you ask him to call me back? Her tone was laced with emotion, quiet but charged, like she was carrying something too heavy for one voice to bear. A voice that wasn't calling a colleague or a salesperson or a friend. It was personal. Who's speaking? I pressed, my hand gripping the phone tighter. Can I give him a message? Another pause, and then she said it. Her name. It's Priscilla. The name hit like a physical blow. I felt it in my gut, in my bones. A name I'd never heard before, but instantly recognized. Not in sound, but in significance. A stranger who knew my husband's number. A stranger who expected him to answer. Priscilla, I repeated, my pulse racing. And how do you know Philip? Her silence said more than any answer would. It was loaded with secrets, the kind silence that only exists when it's covering something. Something that had been happening for longer than I knew. I think I'd rather speak to him, she finally replied, voice fragile with something like confusion. Is he married? The question twisted into me like a knife. She didn't know, or she was pretending she didn't. Yes, I said, my voice a whisper edged with steel. He is. I'm his wife. Silence, except this time it was different. not hesitant, more like disbelief. I could hear her breathing, maybe even imagine her eyes widening, her throat tightening, the realization sinking in that whatever story she'd been told, it wasn't this one. I didn't know, she said, voice trembling. I had no idea. She didn't finish her sentence. She didn't need to. I could hear everything she wasn't saying, the betrayal, the shock, the beginning of heartbreak, for both of us. And then, without another word, she hung up. Just like that. Leaving me standing there, phone pressed to my ear, the silence around me suddenly a roar. My heart pounded in my chest like it was trying to break its way out, to escape the truth it had just been handed. I stood still for a long time. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't make sense of the fragments of truth that had just shattered over me. I found myself walking upstairs, as if in a dream. Philip was just stepping out of the shower, towel draped around his neck. He looked at me, and for a moment I wondered if he could see it. The truth in my eyes. The devastation. "What's wrong?" he asked, casual, too oblivious. I didn't answer, not then. I couldn't. The words were there, but stuck in my throat, screaming for release, but locked sharply behind my ribcage. I stared at him as if looking at someone I'd never met, someone wearing the face of the man I loved, but whose truth had become something foreign, something cold. "Nothing," I finally managed. But it was a lie. My voice was barely audible. Just... The phone rang. He didn't ask who it was. Of course he didn't, because he already knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, eyes open in the dark, listening to Philip's steady breathing beside me. My gaze fixed on the ceiling, replaying every detail of the phone call. Her voice, her surprise, her question. Is he married? The truth had been hiding, in the pocket of his jeans, in the tone of his voice, in the ring he'd taken off and lied about. And now it was hiding in someone else's voice, someone who thought she knew a version of him, someone who didn't. And I began to realize, the moment the truth touches two hearts, it doesn't just break one, it fractures everything. I fell into a kind of daze in those next hours, my breath shallow, my body buzzing with something like grief, or anger, or a mixture of both. And I knew, as I stared at the pale light of dawn creeping into the room, that this wasn't just a crack in our marriage. It was a fracture I couldn't ignore, a truth that had come calling, literally, and I'd answered. The phone call hadn't just shattered the silence, it had shattered me. Suspicion is like a splinter, tiny at first, almost invisible, but the longer it stays, the deeper it buries itself, until suddenly, every movement hurts. After that phone call, the splinter became a blade, and reality, like a slow-moving storm, began to settle in. The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, the kind that feels like a warning. Philip was already downstairs, the comforting sound of breakfast cooking rising up through the floorboards. Bacon, toast. He was being thoughtful. Or guilty. I stayed in bed a while longer, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the truth pressing against me. The world outside the window was still, quiet. The kind of morning that would have once felt safe, but not anymore. Now every silence felt like a story being told without words. When I finally went downstairs, Philip had the table set. 2 plates, 2 glasses of orange juice, and a too bright smile. "Morning," he said cheerfully, flipping a piece of toast in the pan. "Morning," I replied, voice flat. He didn't seem to notice, or he pretended not to. He hummed a tune under his breath, casual, innocent, as if nothing in our world was unraveling. But I saw it. In the way his eyes avoided mine for too long, in the way he kept wiping his hands on the dish towel, even though they were already dry. The cracks in the illusion were beginning to show. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked, sitting down across from me. "I've had better nights." He nodded, took a bite of toast. "You seemed restless." The irony stung. He could sleep peacefully while I was breaking beside him. He took another bite, another sip. The silence grew sharp. I watched him move, each gesture a study in familiarity, and suddenly, painfully unfamiliar. My husband, the man I shared dreams with. The man whose name I wrote in the margins of notebooks when we first fell in love. And now, here I was, looking at him like a stranger wearing his face. "Who's Priscilla?" I finally asked, quietly, but clearly. He froze, just for a second, a stillness that said everything. His fork hovered above the plate. His eyes widened, then narrowed. "What?" "You heard me," I said. "Who is Priscilla?" He swallowed hard. He thought. He chose his next words carefully, too carefully. "She's just someone from work." "So she calls your phone on a Saturday afternoon?" He blinked. "Sometimes there are work emergencies." "Work emergencies," I repeated, leaning in. "Is that what you told her too? When you didn't tell her you were married?" His face lost color. He knew. And I knew he knew. The truth hung between us like fog, thick and suffocating. "Did she tell you that?" he asked, voice rising defensively. "She's lying." "No," I said sharply. "You are." Silence, heavy, deadly. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, his posture deflating. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, I messed up, but it's not what you think." "Tell me what it is then," I demanded, heart pounding, hands shaking. "Tell me why your ring was in your pocket, why she didn't know you were married, why you've been lying." He opened his mouth, closed it. Words fought to form, but whatever story he was about to tell, I already knew it would be another lie. "Adeline," he began, his voice almost a whisper. "I care about you. You know that." "No," I corrected him, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. "You cared about me, past tense, before secrets, before lies, before Priscilla." He looked down at the table, the breakfast now cold and untouched. "It was nothing," he said. "Just a stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything." "But it did," I said. "It meant something to her, enough for her to call you, enough for her to wonder if you were married, enough to be angry, hurt, disappointed." I paused. My voice almost broke. Enough to make me feel like I never mattered at all. He leaned back, his jaw tightened. I could see him retreating into that place where guilt looks like defensiveness, like justification. "I didn't do it to hurt you," he said. A laugh escaped, bitter and sad. "You did it anyway." He didn't answer. Maybe there was nothing left to say. A long pause stretched between us, the kind that's bigger than words. He stood up, walked toward the sink, and turned on the faucet, running water over dishes we would never eat. I watched him. This man I once trusted with my whole heart. The man I once believed could never betray me. And I realized, betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It walks in wearing the clothes of someone you love and whispers lies while you fold laundry, while you sleep, while you trust. That afternoon, I went into our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. I opened the drawer and took out his ring, held it in my palm, felt the weight of it, of everything. Reality had replaced suspicion. And once truth arrives, it doesn't leave, not even when you beg it to. The number glowed from the small piece of paper where I'd written it. A simple string of digits, sharp, inked lines that held enough power to unravel the life I thought I knew. For days, I carried that number around, like a stone in my pocket, heavy, silent, smoldering. Every time I reached for my phone, I felt my breath catch. My thumb hovered over the keypad, trembling. I wanted answers, but I feared them more than I ever feared the unknown. Because sometimes it hurts less to wonder what might be true than to know exactly what is. But that day, something shifted. Maybe it was the way Philip went through the motions, pretending to be present while his heart was elsewhere. Or maybe it was the way silence had begun to suffocate the rooms in our home. Or perhaps it was just that the unanswered truth had become louder than my fear. And so, I called her. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice. The same voice I'd heard days before. But this time, she sounded slightly out of breath, as if caught off guard by the moment. Hello? My throat tightened around the words waiting to be spoken. I didn't know how to start, so I lied. The kind of lie you tell when the truth is too raw to reveal outright. Hi, I said, voice soft, shaking. I'm Philip's sister. Silence. Just for a moment. Then her tone changed, cutting and impatient. Did he tell you to call me? Is that why you're calling? Because if so, you can tell him I don't want to hear from him. Ever. I blinked, taken aback by the fury in her voice. It was raw, genuine, and painful. The kind of emotion that only comes from someone who's been hurt deeply. No. He didn't tell me anything, I managed, my heart pounding. I just wanted to talk. I just need to understand. She scoffed. Understand what? That he's a liar? That he pretended to be something he isn't? That he played me and probably plays you too? My chest burned. My eyes stung. I forced myself to breathe. What exactly did he tell you? I asked. About his life, about himself. He told me he was single, she replied bluntly, voice shaking now, not with anger, but with disbelief. Told me he lived alone, said he'd just ended a long relationship. A divorce, he said. A man putting his life back together. A divorce. The word echoed. I closed my eyes and swallowed hard, steadying myself. And you believed him? I asked. It wasn't meant as accusation, just a need to understand. Why wouldn't I? She said, her voice cracking. He was charming, kind. He always answered my calls, texted me good night. He took me out. He held my hand in public. Who lies like that? Who looks into your eyes and lies with a smile? I didn't answer, because I already knew. The man who shared my bed. The man who promised me forever. The man who walked into the kitchen that morning and asked if I wanted coffee, like our world wasn't already falling apart. For a moment, neither of us spoke. 2 women, both holding shards of the same shattered truth. Different perspectives, same pain. I didn't know, she whispered, suddenly small. When I found out, I felt sick. I blocked his number. I shut him out. But I didn't know about you. I didn't know there was someone else who had even more to lose. I didn't know either, I said softly. And for the first time since everything began, I didn't feel alone or crazy. I felt seen. We talked a bit more, though at some point the words began to falter, because apologies can only carry so much weight when the damage has already been done. We said our awkward goodbyes, and when the call ended, I just stood there, phone in hand, heart in pieces. The truth was now spoken, not hidden, not disguised, not softened by excuses. Philip lied. He lied to her about being single. He lied to me about everything else. And suddenly, the weight of the ring in my drawer made sense, in its awful, devastating way. He didn't take it off by accident. He took it off by intention. To become someone else. Someone unattached, available. So he could live 2 lives without consequence. Or so he thought. I sat down on the floor, back against the cool wall of the hallway. Body shaking, mind spinning, breath barely there. Tears came slowly this time. Not the violent sobs of shock or betrayal. Just quiet, aching drops that felt like they'd been waiting for release. For a long while, I stayed there, wrapped in the silence of confirmation. Suspicion had become truth, and truth, once spoken, doesn't let you go. Later that night, I faced him. I told him everything, the call, her words, the lies. He tried to defend himself, tried to twist the narrative, but there was no space left for spin, no room for excuses. "You hurt us both," I said, voice steady even as my heart crumbled. "You lied to her, and you lied to me, and now we both have to carry the damage of what you did." He didn't respond, not really, just stood quiet, face cold, eyes shifting, looking almost like he was the one who'd been betrayed. And I understood something new that night. The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just shows you how trapped you've been all along. And that's when you begin to understand, recovery isn't about forgetting the truth. It's about learning to live with it. The night had a stillness that felt unnatural, the kind that happens right before a storm finally breaks. Inside our home, the quiet was crushing. Not the peaceful kind that comes with rest, but the suffocating kind that comes with too many truths, too many lies, and too little hope. I could feel the tension sitting heavily in the air, pressing against my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. Philip came home late. I heard his car pull into the driveway and waited, heart pounding. The keys jingled. The door opened and closed. His footsteps approached, familiar, steady, and yet suddenly terrifying. I was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. The lights were dim, casting shadows across the room like ghosts of what used to be. He walked in and paused when he saw me. "You're still up," he said. I didn't answer. Silence was the only language I could handle anymore. He sighed. "Look, Adeline, we need to talk." "We already did," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. I heard everything I needed to hear. He took a few steps closer, settling in the armchair across from me. He rested his elbows on his knees, leaning forward, the pose of a man trying to look sincere, trying to be understood. "You know, I never meant for any of this to happen," he said softly. A bitter laugh rose in my throat, but died before it reached my lips. "You didn't mean to lie? To cheat? To what? Accidentally live a double life?" He looked away, jaw tightening. "It wasn't like that." "How was it, Philip? Explain it to me. Make it make sense." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I don't know. I got carried away. I made a mistake." "Mistakes don't have names," I snapped. "They don't call your phone. They don't ask if you're married." He didn't answer, didn't know how. I stood up, my hands trembling. "I spoke to her, Philip, to Priscilla. She had no idea you were married, none. You told her you were divorced. You let her believe you were free when you were tied to me." He swallowed hard. "I never meant for it to go that far. But it did." Silence fell again, sharp and unyielding. That was it. Something in me broke. My breath hitched, my pulse raced. The room tilted slightly, and before I could stop it, the dam burst. All the pain, all the anger, all the betrayal rushed to the surface at once, and I collapsed into sobs, deep, wrenching sobs that pulled me apart from the inside. "I trusted you," I choked out between tears. "I trusted you with my heart, with everything, and you destroyed it. For what? For excitement? For validation? For something new?" He stared at me, and for the first time since the truth came crashing down, I saw guilt. Not the fleeting kind, or the annoyed kind, but the kind that carries real weight. "I'm sorry," he said. "I really am. I don't expect you to forgive me." "But you want me to," I said, wiping my face with shaky hands. "You want me to swallow this, pretend it didn't happen, and just move forward, don't you?" He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. The truth hung heavy between us. I walked toward the window, staring out at the street. The world outside was calm, quiet, completely unaware of the war being waged inside four walls. "You broke me," I said, calmly now, almost eerily. "You broke something inside me that I'm not sure I can fix." He stood up then, approached me slowly. "I want to fix it," he said. "Let me try. I'll do anything." "For who?" I asked sharply. "For me or for you?" He didn't answer. That was when I knew. I turned back to him and felt a strange sense of clarity, like the fog had finally lifted, revealing the truth in sharp, unforgiving light. "You have to leave," I said quietly. His eyes widened. "What?" "You can't stay here tonight. I can't breathe with you in the same room. I can't heal with you watching me break." "Adeline, go," I said more firmly. "Please, just go." He hesitated, anger flickering beneath the surface, then sadness, then something like defeat. He grabbed his coat, his keys. He paused at the doorway, looking back at me one last time. "I'm sorry," he repeated, voice cracking. And then the door closed. The sound echoed through the house like a final goodbye. I sank to the floor, the weight of everything pulling me down. The house was silent again, but now the silence was mine. Honest, raw. And as I sat there surrounded by the pieces of what used to be us, I realized something painful and true. There are nights that break you. Nights when the person you loved becomes a stranger. Nights when all that's left is grief and the hollow echo of what once was. But there are also nights, quiet, brutal nights, when you finally, truly see yourself. And this was one of them. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel brave. I felt shattered. But strangely, beneath the ache, there was a pulse. A faint beating from deep within, reminding me that even the most broken heart still beats. And maybe, just maybe, that's where survival begins. The day after he left felt unreal. The house, once filled with the rhythm of shared life, was quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar and terrifying. There were no footsteps echoing through the hall, no sound of him clearing his throat or setting a mug on the table, just silence, heavy, absolute. At first it felt like relief, like I could finally breathe without choking on air that smelled like lies. But as the hours passed, that silence became something else. An abyss I kept falling into, over and over. There was a void where his presence used to be, a space I couldn't fill with anything but pain. I found myself wandering the house, touching things without knowing why. The couch, the coffee table, the framed photo of us at the beach, his arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling like we believed in forever. I turned it face down. Like a child hiding from a monster, I tried to erase him from the room. But the truth is, you can't erase someone you still love. And I did love him. That was the hardest part. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, knees pulled to my chest. Afternoon light filtered through the window, dust floating like slow, drifting snow. I closed my eyes and let the memories flood me, the kind that hit like a wave, both warm and cruel. I remembered the first time he told me he loved me. We were sitting in the car at a drive-in theater, watching a movie we barely paid attention to. He turned to me during a quiet scene and said it out of nowhere, his voice small but certain. "I love you." No hesitation, no doubt. I believed him with all of me. Now I wondered, was that love real? Or were those words just another performance in a long string of convincing lies? Maybe both could be true. That's the thing about love. It doesn't dissolve just because reality shifts. You can know someone has hurt you, broken you, betrayed everything you thought you were building together. And still, some part of your heart clings to the memory of who they were to you. That's where I was, trapped between the truth I'd learned and the love I still held. Sometime in the early evening, I picked up my phone. I typed his name into a message, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. The urge to reach out was like an addiction. Every sentence I wrote was some version of "come back," and every version hurt like a wound that was still bleeding. Because wanting someone who hurt you is its own kind of grief. A quiet, endless mourning for what could have been. At one point, the phone buzzed. A text message. My heart leapt. Just seeing his name flash across the screen triggered a mix of relief and panic. "Are you okay?" Just 3 words, simple, but they felt like a lifeline and a trap. What do you say to the person who shattered you? Do you tell them you're falling apart? Or that you're trying somehow to stitch yourself back together with thread that's barely holding? I typed back, "No." Just that. No explanation, no forgiveness, just the truth in its rawest form. The reply came a minute later. "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen, feeling the words sink into me like stones. I knew he meant it. I knew he felt regret. But regret doesn't undo the past. It can't rebuild trust. It can't erase betrayal. And yet, part of me still wanted to respond with softness, to turn the key in the lock that held the door between us, to open myself again, even if it meant being hurt again. Because loving someone, truly loving them, it changes you. It teaches your heart to stretch, to forgive, to hope. And it doesn't stop just because the other person proves unworthy. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. I didn't respond, couldn't, not yet. By nighttime, the quiet became unbearable. I walked into our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed where we fell asleep together for years, limbs tangled, breaths shared. The indentation of his body on the mattress was still there. The blanket still held the faintest scent of him. And that was when the tears came again, slow, steady, almost peaceful. Not the violent sobs of despair, but the quiet weeping of someone grieving something that still lived inside them. I curled up on one side of the bed, pulling the blanket close, breathing in memories I wished were lies too. I let myself cry, let myself hurt, let myself love, even if it was only in the past tense. Because letting go isn't a moment, it's a process. And sometimes, the hardest part of heartbreak isn't the pain. It's the love that refuses to leave. Before I fell asleep, I whispered into the quiet room, "I miss you." Not to him, not for him, but for the version of myself who once believed in a love that didn't know how to lie. A love that didn't ask me to break in order to survive. That night, I didn't find strength, or clarity, or peace. But I found something else. A tiny, fleeting acceptance that it was okay to still love him. That healing didn't require forgetting. It just required time. And I knew, as I drifted into sleep alone, that I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. But someday, I would be. And when that day came, I hoped I'd still recognize myself. Some heartbreaks are quiet. They slip in without warning, settle deep, and begin to reshape your soul without even asking permission. But others arrive like storms, violent, destructive, impossible to ignore. And when they do, they leave behind ruins you never imagined you'd have to rebuild from. I woke up the next morning feeling hollow, numb. Like every emotion I once had been drained and left in pieces across the floor. The house was still. The sun filtered weakly through the curtains, illuminating everything except the ache inside me. Philip was gone. I had asked him to leave. I had spoken the words. But now, sitting alone at the kitchen table with my hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee I'd forgotten to drink, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Not because he didn't deserve to go, he did, but because I didn't know how to exist without him. I leaned back, closing my eyes, and let the flood of memories come. Not the painful ones this time, not the lies, not the betrayal, but the sweetness, the laughter in the grocery store aisles, the lazy Sunday mornings, the way he used to touch my cheek when I fell asleep on the couch. All the small things that, in hindsight, felt enormous. I had loved him with everything I had. And some part of me, the part that had written his name in dream-filled notebooks, that had vowed forever with trembling hands, still did. And so, in my brokenness, I made a decision. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, sat down at my desk, and reached for a pen. My hand trembled as it touched the page. I took a breath, then started writing. Philip, I tried to be angry. I tried to shut the door on everything you were, and everything we were. But I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know what you did. I know who she is. I know how deep the lie went. And believe me, I feel it with every breath, every waking moment. But I also know this. I still love you. In a way I don't know how to undo. The pen scratched across the paper, the letters turning into sentences, the sentences into confession. You broke my trust. You shattered the heart I placed in your hands without hesitation. But if love were something that could be cleanly severed, it wouldn't be worth anything at all. I'm not asking for explanations. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm not even sure I'm ready to forgive. But I am asking for a chance. Not for the old us. That version is gone. Forever. And that's a grief I'll carry for a long time. But maybe, there is a new version of us that can exist. A version built not on illusions, but on truth. No more lies. No more pretending. If you're willing to be honest, brutally honest, then maybe we can find a way back. Not to what we had, but to something different, something real. And if you're not willing, then I will learn to let you go. It will take time. It will break me in ways I'm afraid to imagine. But I will do it. I deserve to heal, to be loved without betrayal. I stopped writing for a moment. The words blurred as tears pooled in my eyes. My hand clenched around the pen. Philip, come home. Not because I beg you to, but because you want to. Because you choose me. Again, not as a convenience. Not as a habit, but because you see this love, bruised, battered, and believe it's worth saving. I signed my name at the bottom. Not Adeline like I always had, but simply, a woman who still believes in us. I folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. My hands were steady now, calm even. There was something empowering about letting my heart speak, even if it came from a place of raw desperation. My vulnerability was no longer a weakness. It was my truth, and truth, once set free, never loses its power. I drove to the small mailbox at the end of Maplewood Springs Road, the letter sitting beside me like a fragile heartbeat. The world outside was quiet, the kind of late afternoon that felt sacred. A soft wind rustled the trees. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. Life was happening, moving forward, with or without love. When I slid the letter into the box, I didn't hesitate. I didn't second guess. I simply closed the lid, placed my hand over it, and let out a breath I'd been holding for far too long. A desperate plea had been made. A last bridge had been built, from the wreckage of what was toward the unknown of what could be. Whatever happened next, I knew this. I had loved deeply. I had tried, and that mattered. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't break. I didn't feel angry or numb. I simply felt the truth settle in me like a quiet exhale. Whether he returned or not, I had taken a step toward healing. And that, in its own fragile, powerful way, was a kind of love too. The days that followed were quiet, not the kind born of peace, but the kind shaped by waiting. Each hour felt suspended, like a breath held too long. I kept myself busy, or at least pretended to. Cleaning, walking, cooking meals I couldn't eat. Anything to keep my hands moving so my heart wouldn't cave in. The letter was gone now, carried through post boxes and sorting offices, on a journey toward him. Toward whatever came next. A fragile prayer wrapped in paper, a plea written in the language of love and heartbreak, still searching for a home. It rained that week, the kind of rain that falls softly at first, then doesn't know how to stop. For some people, rain means gloom. For others, renewal. For me, it was a reminder of everything that was still unresolved. I found myself standing by the window often, watching the drops race down the glass, each one carrying a story I couldn't tell out loud. The garden outside was soaked, the flowers heavy with water, their heads bowed. It mirrored the heaviness in me, the way love can both nourish and drown you. I thought of Philip often, not always with anger anymore, sometimes with tenderness, sometimes with an ache so deep I had to sit down just to breathe through it. I wondered what he felt when he read the letter. If he opened it at all, if he carried it in his pocket or threw it away, if he whispered my name out loud, because I whispered his. I tried to go back to normal life, whatever that meant now. I went to the grocery store, made polite conversation with the cashier, watched families fill their carts with cereal and hope. I sat on park benches and listened to the laughter of children, sharp and bright, unburdened by the weight of grown-up heartbreak. And still, I waited. People don't talk about the waiting, how unbearable it is, how it becomes its own kind of blindness. Your eyes fixed on what's ahead, unable to see what's right in front of you. Every time the phone buzzed, my heart reacted before I could stop it. Every time the doorbell rang, the air caught in my chest. Hope is cruel that way. It never dies quietly. It thrashes. One evening, as the rain softened into mist, I walked down to the edge of town. Maplewood Springs was small and quiet at night. The street lamps cast golden halos on the wet pavement, and every step echoed like a question. I reached the old footbridge, the one over the shallow creek that wound behind the library. We used to come here, sit on the edge with our feet in the water, talking about places we'd travel, children we'd name, dreams we'd live. I remembered how he once said the sound of water always calmed his mind. I wondered if it did now. I stood there, listening, to the trickle of the creek, to my own heartbeat, to the rain falling softly in the trees. And then I did something I hadn't done since everything fell apart. I prayed, not to be taken back, not to be loved unconditionally, just to be seen. Let him understand that I tried, I whispered. Let him feel what I felt. Let him know that even when I broke, it was because I loved. My voice trembled, swallowed by the rain. I closed my eyes and let the tears come. More tears than I thought I had left. The kind that weren't angry or desperate or even sad. Just honest. Because waiting isn't really about time. It's about surrender. It's about realizing that love isn't something you can drag back by force. It either returns willingly, or it leaves room for something truer to arrive. Eventually, I walked back home, soaked and slow, but strangely clearer. The rain had washed something away. Not the pain, not the ache, but the illusion that I still had control. I didn't. All I had left was hope, and the strength to let it rise and fall on its own rhythm. When I finally returned, a single envelope rested on the doorstep, its edges damp with rain. My breath caught. It was addressed to me, written in his handwriting. I held it like it might dissolve in my hands. I didn't open it right away. I sat on the floor, back against the front door, and just held it. I wasn't ready. Not ready to hear what he'd say, or what he wouldn't. Not ready to read the truth of whether he still loved me, whether he was sorry, whether he wanted to return. But I knew this much. Whether his words held goodbye or hope, whether his heart was still bound to mine or not, I would survive it. I would grow from it, because love had broken me, and broken me open. And sometimes that's the only way light finds its way in. I placed the letter on the table beside me, drew in a long breath, and whispered his name one last time, not pleading, not despairing, but grateful. For loving, for losing, for still believing. Rain tapped gently outside. The world kept turning, and I finally understood. Sometimes letting go isn't giving up. It's leaving space for whatever is true to find you. Leave a comment below, sharing your own experience of love, loss, or healing. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss a moment of truth and transformation. Stay with us. The next video continues to another emotional journey.